I want lots of participation. I don't want to talk the whole time I'm standing up here. So participate if you would. That would be really helpful. And we're going to talk about something fun. So we're going to talk about superheroes. So I know that probably most of you have a favorite superhero. I'm sure you've watched movies or read comics. So let's talk about superheroes. Who has a favorite superhero and who is it? Green Arrow. I like Green Arrow. Why is your favorite? Okay. Nightwing. I don't know who Nightwing is, but why is he or she? I don't know. He your favorite. Okay, so he's the first Robin. Superman? Why? Because he can fly and do a lot of things for people. That was a similar answer we had in another class. Sorry if I don't get the toss to you here.
Spider-Man.
Spider-Man, why?
I had a big look for that.
Okay, so he's kind of handsome. You kind of think he's attractive. Okay, nothing wrong with that answer. Here? Thor? Why? What are some of those powers? His hammer. Okay, what else? Lightning. Okay.
My grandfather.
Your grandfather. Okay, why?
He's a
Because he's a Vietnam veteran. So superheroes can be people that we know, right? Right here. Iron Man. Why? Because he's attractive. Okay. That's a recurring theme.
Captain America.
Yep.
He has good values.
He has good values. Okay. Okay. So please say the name again. Iron Man. So you think Robert Downey Jr. is attractive, or you think?
Yeah.
Okay. And then, okay. Electra. Is that a girl?
Yes.
What I don't know about her. Okay, that's cool. So she can fight for what she believes in. Well,
Iron Man, but not for the same reason as those two. Because he's amazing at robotics and everything.
so he's smart.
He's smart. It's not because he's, I already know.
Attractive. Or has an awesome suit, but it's because he created the suit. His brain.
Created the suit.
Okay, cool. Okay, so, oh, sorry about that. Keep it, you can have it, you caught it. There you go. So, why do you guys think that people are drawn to superhero stories? What do you think makes them stand out? Because they save the world. You like that, huh? Why else?
They're role models.
They're role models, okay? Inspirational. They help people out. Oh, sorry, short to you every time. Okay, what other reasons?
They're selfless.
They're selfless? Okay, so I have a question. Are all superheroes, do they start that way, maybe? A lot of them have like a story, right? So whose was Green Arrow over here, right? Green Arrow, that was you, right? So he kind of started out as not so great a guy, right?
Yeah.
He was kind of a jerk, kind of a playboy, and then he gets abandoned to some island and has a life-changing experience and comes back and wants revenge, and then he wants to help people, right? Is that kind of his general story? So do many superheroes that we talk about kind of have a story, kind of have a journey that they go through? A process, right, that creates them and makes them who they are? I'm sure Electra kind of has a background story as well, right? So today we're going to talk about the very first superhero. Does anyone know who the first superhero was? What? Batman? No, let's go farther back. Anybody? An Egyptian? No, he wasn't an Egyptian, but you're in the right, at least, era, kind of. What we've been talking about. Oh, Gilgamesh. That's what we're talking about today, right? Is Gilgamesh. So that's what we're going to talk about is Gilgamesh. And we're going to talk about there's a story about Gilgamesh, and we call it the Epic of Gilgamesh. That means it's kind of a long poem. And so I'm going to start a PowerPoint. Are you all right? Can we do that?
Absolutely. Which button do I push to make it bigger?
That one.
This one?
So that will come on. talk about Gilgamesh and the story of Gilgamesh. You can go to the next one.
Yep.
So Gilgamesh was a real life king that existed. Yeah, I don't know that it does, right? Do you move it? Do you want him to try to?
Yeah, because he'll drive me crazy till he tries.
Okay, you can try it quickly. Don't break it.
There's a whole bunch of erasers up there trying to push it over already. They'll drop on your head.
Oh, that was good. Thank you. all last hour we just watched it kind of crooked. Okay, so Gilgamesh was a real life king, and he lived in a place called Uruk, and that is in modern day Iraq. And it's a real city. It exists today. And do you guys remember what this area was called? We kind of talked about it yesterday. Mesopotamia, okay. What specifically was it called in regards to the water? Anybody remember? What? The Fertile Crescent, that's not what I'm looking for. That was what it was called. No. It specifically relates to these two. No. This is the Euphrates River and the Tigris River.
Starts with an M.
Yeah, so Mesopotamia was like the land between two rivers, right? So why do you think that mattered? Why was that important? Why? They got a lot of water. Is water necessary? So why do you think that the same reasons apply, kind of, for the Nile River to Egypt as these two rivers for Mesopotamia? They had different purposes, but they allowed civilizations to grow there, right? Because there was water. They could grow things. They had a way to exist. So this is where Gilgamesh existed. This is where his story takes place, is in this city right here. You want to go to the next slide?
You betcha.
So, the Sumerians were his people, or kind of the civilization that it was written on. Use this slide to tell me about their writing. How did they write? What did they write in? Nope. They're not pictographs, are they?
Cunes, no, they're wedge shaped, so they're
Okay.
not pictographs.
So they're
no.
not pictographs. Use this slide. Cuneiform or cuneiform. That was their form of writing. It's different than hieroglyphs. So who wrote in hieroglyphs? The Egyptians. So they were two different civilizations that created their own independent writing systems. That's pretty interesting. So Gilgamesh lived somewhere between 2700 BC and 2500 BC. I don't know exactly when. And the Epic of Gilgamesh was written in cuneiform. Will you hit the next slide?
You bet.
So cuneiform is written on clay tablets. So the clay is soft when they start them, and they make markings into the clay, and then the clay is hardened, and that's how they wrote. That's their writing, and that was able to, it lasted for a long time, right? So these are like the size of the tablets. You can see it fits in someone's hand. This is what it looks like up close. So when I look at this, I mean, that's tiny writing, right? That's just itty bitty little. And then when you look at this, to me, this kind of looks like chicken scratch. When I look at it, that's kind of what I see. I see chicken scratch, and there's nothing in my brain that says, oh man, I am pretty sure I can read this. I'm pretty sure I can figure this out. There's nothing that works in my brain that says that, but for some people it does. So what they end up doing is they take all of these different little symbols and they put them on paper like this, and then they translate it from here. But in order to do that, in order to read cuneiform, they have to hold the tablets, they have to turn them in their hands, because it's almost three-dimensional. They have to like check out the markings from different angles. They have to turn the tablets. So it's really painstaking and really crazy, but I think it's kind of fun to look at. So this is what the epic was written on, tablets like this, and they found different tablets. So will you go to the next slide? So we're going to talk about who Gilgamesh was, and before we go into the epic and his story, and it's embellished for sure. Like I said, he was a real person. So I have a short little video clip that we're going to watch about some people talking about Gilgamesh, and just go from there.
And where it is.
Some temples here. Come along. Gilgamesh was an historical figure. He was the king of an early city-state named Uruk in southern Mesopotamia.
Uruk is a few hours' drive from Baghdad, and there was a lot of warfare that went on and continues to this day.
The city still exists under more or less the same name, so you can actually go and visit Uruk, and you can trace the outline of the Great Walls, which in Mesopotamian tradition were attributed to Gilgamesh. You can see the recreation of the great temple of Ishtar, which Gilgamesh at least knew.
One of the benefits of reading Gilgamesh is to see Iraq in a new way. So to understand this is the cradle of our own civilization.
I read it in college. It was in the 70s, and I was protesting against the war in Vietnam. I was protesting against the Shah's regime. And one of the things that struck me at that time about Gilgamesh was the fact that he was so paradoxical. Gilgamesh himself. Do we empathize with him? Do we hate him? That whole hubris bred of power and the greed to want to do more becomes very naked.
Shortly before the second war broke out, Saddam Hussein gave a speech to his generals in which he said, well, perhaps like Gilgamesh, he'd go off and meditate for a while. So that the work has an extraordinary vitality in political life today.
I think what fascinated me about
Okay, so that's just a little tidbit about Gilgamesh and where he was from. But like I said, he was a real king. And then in his lifetime, they think that he was deified during his lifetime, and then this epic was written about him. In the epic, we learn different things about Gilgamesh, and we go through his hero story. And he starts out as this king, and he's powerful, and he has all these different things, but he's kind of a loser. People don't like him. He's not nice to women, but he likes lots of women. He's kind of cruel to his people. He's not generous at all, and the people don't like him. So the gods decide that they're going to teach Gilgamesh a lesson, and they send down Enkidu, and Enkidu is this beast man, and he is supposed to be Gilgamesh's equal, and they battle. And Gilgamesh can't overpower Enkidu, and Enkidu can't overpower Gilgamesh, so they essentially truce and they become best friends. And that is kind of when Gilgamesh changes, and he becomes more human. He's a little bit more humble and cares a little bit more about people, and it starts because of his friendship with Enkidu. And so now Enkidu is his sidekick, and they're gonna go and they're gonna be superheroes, right? So their big battle that is most well known is when Enkidu and Gilgamesh, they defeat the evil creature Humbaba. And Humbaba was the defender of the cedar forest, but he was evil and he was wicked, and they are able to defeat him and to slay him. And then the people decide that hey, Gilgamesh isn't so bad, he's going to protect us, he's going to help us out. But because of all that, the gods, for whatever reason, decide that Enkidu needs to die. So they give him some sickness and Enkidu dies. And that's torturous for Gilgamesh, because that's the one person that he really truly cared about. And that makes Gilgamesh face his own mortality. So now he's totally afraid of death. So Gilgamesh's next big thing is that he's going to go on a journey and he's going to search out immortality. And then he eventually learns about accepting death. So those are the big things of this epic. He becomes respected and famous. And that's when he kind of changes and cares about people. They have the battle of Humbaba, and he copes with the loss of a friend, and then he learns about accepting death on his search for immortality. So what I want to do now is we're going to get into groups of 3 or 4, and we're going to read a section of the Epic of Gilgamesh. And I want you guys to look for, will you turn on those lights back there for me? Thank you.
You get the lights.
I want you guys to look for things that seem familiar, that stand out to you. It can be anything, and I want you to talk about it in your group. So it's kind of a long reading. It might kind of feel long, and remember, it's written 4,000 years ago, so the flow of it might be a little different than you're used to. But I want you guys to just kind of read it and discuss what sounds familiar to you in this story. And discuss as you're reading, that's fine. And I'll just kind of pull you in groups right here, okay? And then feel free to slide closer. So you 3 will kind of gather together and be a little group. You 3 will, and then you 3. So slide together with your groups and start reading and talking about it. You 3 will together. And then you 3. Back with these guys. So those 3, yeah, that triangle right there. And then you 3, so maybe you guys come up here so you have a little bit of space. You guys can just read together as a group. And just, I kind of blocked the arrows or where I want you guys to read from. There's an arrow at the start and an arrow at the bottom. And then you 4. So will you come up here and you 4 go together? Oh, sorry. So the person that's talking right now is not Gilgamesh. It's a guy named Utnapishtim. So he's the one that's telling this story to Gilgamesh because now he's finally made it to this immortal man who's going to tell him. So that's who's talking about. So if you guys want to read it out loud, that's totally fine. So the God who reads Take another minute to kind of discuss what you guys have read so far. Did he build something? He built a boat, a flood. If you go to the back page, have you guys started talking about it at all? What are you thinking?
Lots of interest.
It sounds like what? A Bible story? A particular one? Have you guys had a chance to talk about it with your groups a little bit? About what you kind of read? What do you guys think? Okay, let's come back together as a class and kind of discuss what we read about a little bit. Does somebody want to kind of sum up the reading? You don't have to like analyze it or anything, but just kind of want to sum up what we read. Anybody will take a stab? What you kind of read about?
There's a guy that goes to the sleeping guy.
Okay.
And he said, the gods are gonna kill everybody.
How?
With like a lot of things.
Okay. So the gods are going to kill everybody with rain and floods. So what?
Tear down your house and build a boat and go sail away somewhere.
Okay. Does that remind anybody of anything? What does it remind you of? You're nodding your head yes? It reminds you of Noah. Okay, what? Noah in the ark. So this is just like a really interesting parallel, right? So 4,000 years ago, in this Epic of Gilgamesh, here's this story that sounds an awful lot like Noah and the ark, right? So let me tell you a little bit more about these tablets. So they were written 4,000 years ago, like 2700 BC, and they existed for 2,000 years. People continued to translate them, they continued to copy them, and then 500 years before Christ, they kind of disappeared. They were buried, they were lost. We didn't have them. And then around 1840, some archaeologists were digging and they found some of these tablets. And then they found many more of these tablets. And they found these tablets all over the region and the area. So not just in one location, they found them all over. And they looked at them. Do you guys remember what the tablet looked like? And they said, there's this thing. We can't read it. They stuck it in a museum in London. And then in 1872, a man by the name of George Smith, he looked at these tablets and he's like, I think I can translate these. And he